Hey folks, welcome back. Here we are at Northern Hog and Beef, and we are going to get to work today on a really special project. It's only our second project, but I know it's one that I get asked about a lot. And it's 3-2-1 pork ribs. The 3-2-1 ribs are pretty simple, just like the name. The first 3 hours, we cook them on the smoker for 3 hours at around 200 to 225. Then we're going to wrap them for 2 hours. We're going to unwrap them. We're going to put a little bit of sauce on them and let them tack up for that last hour. The entire cook's about a 6-hour cook. So 3-2-1 ribs, we're gonna get right at it. Now I have a couple of ribs here from my favorite place, Meathead, as you all know. I can see that we've got just a little bit of cleanup we wanna do. So we'll get rid of that, but for the most part, they're pretty good. I actually had the butcher pull the membrane off already. So the membrane's already been removed, but that's pretty important. You want these ribs, when they're cooked, you want them to be able to fall apart off of the rib. So to take that membrane off, the easiest way to do that is simply to take a butter knife, put it up under the membrane, get it started, and then take a paper towel, and you can usually pull the membrane all off in one piece. So we had that done. If your butcher will do that for you, that's terrific. But let's get to work on these ribs. So there's a couple of little tricks to these ribs. The first trick is, I always like to make sure I have a glove on hand, because the first thing I'm going to start with is a little bit of mustard. That mustard doesn't really do anything for the flavor. All that does is that helps all the seasonings that we're going to put on just kind of bond to the meat. So we'll get started with that and kind of get some of that mustard on here. We're going to do this quick so as that we don't have to keep you guys on a video for the next 40 minutes to learn how to make a 6-hour rib. You want to make sure that you get a nice coating all over those ribs. We're going to start with the backs and make sure we get it all on the edges, because we want those seasons to bond absolutely everywhere on the rib. Let's turn that guy over, get a little more mustard on here. That should do it. Get a nice coating going on there, and we're just about ready to start the seasonings here. So again, just really important to make sure you get all of the edges, because you're going to want that seasoning to bond absolutely everywhere. And don't worry about if you use maybe a little too much mustard. By the time all of the cook is done, it'll render it away and you won't actually taste that mustard. What you're going to taste by that time is the seasoning. So we've got our seasonings ready. And we're going to start off with some kosher salt. I like to use kosher salt. It's just a little bit more of a rock salt. And we just want to give that a light sprinkle, and that'll help just take some of the moisture out of the meat while it's setting. And we just kind of get that going. Next thing I like to use, is a little bit of pepper. We just always use just a little bit of black pepper, and we're not using a lot because we are going to spice these up quite a bit with a couple of different rubs and seasonings, but this just gives just that little bit of seasoning for us. Now a little bit of garlic powder, always nice to have a little garlic flavor, not a lot. Believe me, again, you're going to see in a moment how much rub we're going to use. So you don't need to overcoat them with all the core seasonings. You just put a little bit on, just gives that extra little bit of flavor. Now, now we get to the good stuff. We're going to use two things. We're going to use a seasoning that I use. This is available at Meathead shop here in Edmonton. And once we're done with the seasoning, we're going to hit it with this maple rub. Maple rub this time for pork has a reason, because we're actually doing our Canadian version of 3-2-1 ribs. I've never seen anyone use maple syrup before, but I've tried it, and it's really interesting because at the midpoint of the cook, we're going to use a little bit of butter, we're going to use a little bit of brown sugar, and we're going to use a little bit of maple syrup to give a little Canadian kick. So to give us a little bit more of that maple flavor, that's why we're going to use this rub. So that's available at Meathead here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Now let's just get going with these seasonings. We give a light seasoning here of the core. This is just an all-purpose seasoning, but it's available again at Meathead. And we'll just get these all seasoned up. And now for the rub. Now, when I do the rub, this is a generous portion. because this is where all your flavors are going to come from. So I want to make sure that I really coat the meat nicely. And what that'll do is give us a really beautiful color when we're cooking up these ribs. So we want to make sure, don't be shy with the rub. Spend the money on the rub. You won't be disappointed. You want to make sure that those are really nicely done up. So now we're going to also want to make sure we hit those edges, and a little bit of the excess kicking around here, and a little bit of the edges. And we're going to do exactly the same thing again on the front. And then we'll get these things ready to put up on the smoker at about 225 degrees. So I'll finish these up. We'll take them out to the smoker. We'll show you what they look like before they go in. We'll see you at the smoker. Okay folks, it's time to get this thing started. Just to let you know, remind you again, we have the smoker set right now at about 225 for the first 3 hours of this cook. So all we're really gonna do now is just get these things on nice and evenly. And it's important to note, we put those rib side down. So we want the rib side to be down, the meat side to be up. We're gonna leave these here. Now we are gonna check on them in a little while. I'll show you what we're gonna do with them. In about an hour and a half, we're gonna give them a quick spritz with a combination of apple cider vinegar, apple juice, and a little bit of Worcester sauce. We'll put that mixture together. I'll show you how that's done. We'll be back here in about an hour and a half to check on these. Okay folks, now while those ribs are out there and those things are starting to smoke nicely, we're gonna get that concoction I was talking about ready, that spray. Now I went out and bought a really nice sprayer. I don't think that's really that necessary, but remember I do this just about every weekend. And if you're kind of a weekend warrior like I am, you may wanna pick up a really good sprayer. So what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna make up a mixture to keep that meat moist. In about an hour and a half, we're gonna go give it just a light spray, and we're gonna keep an eye on it, because the trick with ribs is just to keep them nice and moist while they're cooking. You don't want them to dry out, and we're doing a really slow cook. So I'm gonna use about 1 part apple cider vinegar, 2 parts apple juice, and about, I don't know, I use about a tablespoon. I don't know that there's a necessary measurement for this, but about a tablespoon or so of Worcester sauce for that little bit of bite and to help break down the meat a little bit. The acids also in the apple cider vinegar will also do the same. It'll help break down some of the meat fiber a little bit. So that's it. We give it a good mix. We're all set. We'll go out there in about an hour and a half and we'll start spraying this meat down, and we'll just keep an eye on it for the balance of that 3-hour cook. And once we're finished with the 3-hour cook, we'll come back. We're gonna wrap them for part 2. So part 1 is 3 hours in the smoker exposed. Part 2 is 2 hours wrapped with a beautiful concoction we're gonna make and put on there with some butter and some maple syrup and a couple of other fun things, brown sugar. And then the last part, we'll glaze them over, we'll expose them again for 1 hour, allowing that barbecue sauce to just tack up on it. So folks, we're about an hour and a half into this cook. We're just gonna come out and you can see those ribs are looking really good, but they're starting to dry out a little bit. We're getting a nice crust on them. So, time for that quick spray. We just want to moisten them up a little bit. And there you have it. They're ready for about another hour and a half. We'll keep an eye on these. We may give them 1 more spritz and another hour and a half, and we'll be wrapping these up. Okay folks, so we are 3 hours into the cook. We've got a really nice char, nice crust starting to happen. You can see that I actually sprayed these about 3 or 4 times throughout the cook. So we've got a nice moist bark starting to happen. So we're gonna take these off, we're gonna take them inside, we're gonna wrap them, and then we'll show you how to wrap them up, and then we'll put them back on for 2 more hours. So you just saw beautiful bark already on these things. They're about 195 degrees right now in the meat portions between the bones. The bone is starting to pull away really nicely, so it's time to wrap them. So, the tricks for wrapping. For starters, I'm using this time, I can't believe it's not butter. The reason I use that is it's nice and soft, really easy to work with. And I did put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds just to make it pliable. And so you can see that this is nice and soft, and we're able to work with that butter now. So on top of the butter, we're going to put in a little bit of brown sugar. I don't know, I'm going to say that's about a half a cup maybe. And we're going to mix that up nicely. So right now we've got a brown sugar butter coating that we're going to use. Now, a lot of guys like to use, and I know I did in the beginning, honey. Honey works really nicely, gives you a nice sweet taste. But I wanted to put a little bit of a Canadian spin on what we were making today. So today we're going to use Mrs. Butterworth's butter maple syrup. And if we could just get into it, there we go. And we're just going to pour, I don't know, quarter of a cup, because this is what's going to help keep everything nice and moist for us during the last stage of the cook. So we'll get all that mixed up. That Mrs. Butterworth's has butter infused in it, so that with the butter that we're already using and the brown sugar, I want you to see the consistency of what we're using here. You can see that it's very pliable, nice, easy to work with, so that when we spread this on, it's not going to be difficult. So let's get to work on that. What I like to do is I like to use double foil. I've watched guys use double foil before on other YouTube channels, and it works really well, because what you don't want is you don't want all the moisture to leak out. You want to try to keep all of that contained. So we'll just bring one rib out. I always like to hit it with just a little bit more seasoning. Again, you can't get enough rub, and it just gives that nice color. And we'll just pat that down a little bit. We'll get a little bit of this butter on there. We'll just mix that on and just get it nicely coated over the ribs. You don't have to worry now about your rub coming off, because your rub has been cooking on there for 3 hours, so it's nicely adhered. You can see that. And you see the nice little glaze we get, and you want to make sure to get the sides. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll just take a little bit of this, drop it on there, get it all nice and covered up, catch all the areas that we can. Now, that's about ready to be wrapped. So we'll just wrap that guy up. You can see the nice glaze we get on that. Beautiful. All right, so really simple. Again, I'm using 2 pieces of tin foil. I just want to get a really nice wrap. And again, the trick, we really don't want to tear that tin foil. We don't want the bones to come through. What we want is we want all of that moisture to stay in for the last portion of the cook. Now you'll recall, very important, the meat side is up right now. When we place it, we're going to place it face side down so that all those juices cook with the meat. And in 2 hours, we're going to throw this back on. In 2 hours, we'll pull it off. And that'll be the last stage of the cook, where we pull it out of the tin foil, we put a little bit of a barbecue glaze on it, we let it sit for about another 45 minutes to an hour, and they should be ready to eat. Okay, so we're gonna put these ribs back on. They're all wrapped up, but I did want to show you one more thing. I like to keep the ribs now off of the direct heat. So I use a combination of tray and pan. That way, if there's any drippings, they're gonna catch in here. We can use them later, should there be any tears in the tin foil. But more importantly, it's just gonna keep that direct heat of the grill off and just get us a nice uniform heat all the way around. So, we'll close this up and we're good for 2 hours. Okay, so we brought them in off the barbecue. We've opened them up, taken them out of the foil, and what I didn't show, because anybody can do this, is we just saved all those juices that came out of the tin foil. That's why we use this large pan. We took that, we mixed it in with some of our Sticky Fix barbecue sauce. That's available again at Meathead. And we took some of the fats that were rendered and some of the oils and the butter, and we've mixed it with the barbecue sauce. So now what we're going to do is just get these ready for the final stage of the cook. Now, if you come up close, you can have a look. You can see that these are just nicely coming apart. You see the bones are just nice, but you're still gonna have a bite on it. It's not gonna completely fall off. It's gonna be nice to hold on to and nice to bite into. So now we'll just put a little bit of this barbecue sauce on. We'll get that bottom, get them all nicely coated. So this is going to be the last little piece. It's just going to give us that last little bit of a tack that you get on, a tackiness on the outside of that barbecue rib. And that's the part that we all know when we first bite into a rib. So that's the back side. We'll just flip that bad boy over and you can see how nicely it's just cooked beautifully. We'll set it down and we'll get a little bit of barbecue sauce on the other side. Get it nicely coated. Now make sure you get all up on the edge of the bones and get all of the different little areas. Everybody likes to, you know, when you've got all the meat off the bone and just kind of suck on that thing for a minute and get all that last little bit of crusty barbecue sauce off. So we're all set. We're going to put these back on. It's important to note we're using this same pan again. I like to keep the meat up off of the direct heat now. I want to make sure that the heat gets all the way around that, tacks the bottom and the top. So we'll take these, we'll put them back on. They'll be about another 45 minutes to an hour just to tack up, and these will be ready to eat. We'll see you in a few minutes. All right, so we brought them in off of the barbecue now. Everything's ready. We actually made up a special little surprise here, little extra something. I did up some bacon in the smoker, and we smoked these beans in a cast iron pan in the smoker as well. So that'd be really nice with the buns. But the real reason we're here is for these beautiful ribs. So you can see these ribs are nice and tender, lots of movement in them. We'll just cut one of these guys up here. Cut one of these guys up. You see it's coming right off the bone really nicely here for us. Nice smoke ring. All set. Now, let's hope Kelly finds it just as delicious as I think it's going to be. One more piece here. So we'll finish cutting these guys up. We'll let Kelly have a try of this and see what he thinks. And I guess, guys, this is it. Big test. We'll see you in a minute. Okay, well, it's taste time. Kelly's going to look at that beautiful smoke ring. All set. Kelly, it's time. Let's see if this is any good or not.
Time for the big test, folks. One moment here. It comes right off the bone, but it's not mushy or anything. Like, it's full of substance. There's a ton of flavor. Absolutely amazing. You guys gotta try this out.
How do we do, Kel?
So good.
Excellent. All right. There you go, folks. Don't take his word for it. Try it out. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.
If you like what you saw today, if you like what you see on our channel, please subscribe. We'll see you again next time.